I saw a dog get mauled this weekend. I'm traumatized. Alex and I were hauling boxes with 2 movers when a horrible yelp tore through the quiet street. We sprinted up the hill with a few neighbors and found a huge mutt named Max, whipping tiny poodle Luna around like a rag doll. Mrs. Chen, Luna's elderly owner, was screaming in shock while our neighbor Sam even threatened to grab a gun if Max didn't let go. Movers hurled blankets and jabbed brooms, people clapped and shouted, but blood kept spattering as Luna shrieked. After what felt like an eternity, Max finally loosened his jaw. Mrs. Chen scooped up Luna, wrapped her in a towel, and sped to the emergency vet. None of us have heard whether Luna made it. Max, tail wagging as if he just played fetch, trotted off unmuzzled. The next morning I saw him again on a leash, his walker looking utterly unconcerned. I warned everyone in the neighborhood group chat about leash laws and reminded them that Max isn't a pit bull. I don't want this turning into breed bashing. Jake even asked whether my own dog carries liability insurance. The whole scene haunts me. Mrs. Chen's wail, Luna's high-pitched yelps, Alex standing pale beside the sofa we still hadn't loaded. I barely slept that night and froze every time I walked past Max's yard, imagining him slipping the leash again. I feel sick for Luna, for Mrs. Chen, and oddly for Max, who may never understand the damage he caused. A story from Hold Professional.
I feel so for the OP. It's natural to be shaken by Luna's cries and Mrs. Chen's anguish. When a friend's dog got hurt, I couldn't sleep either, and talking gently about it helped me heal.
I wonder if Max truly deserves all the blame, OP, or if Mrs. Chen should have kept Luna safer. Because sometimes people's missteps create far more chaos than a dog's instinct.
Seriously, OP, this is like a canine circus gone wrong. Someone get me popcorn before the next dog fight because this neighborhood drama needs to chill out.
Stop replaying the horror, OP, and do something practical. Call animal control on Max. Report this incident and learn basic dog safety instead of haunting yourself over it.
I hid my sister's DNA secret and now the whole family's against me. Over 1 year ago, my sisters and I took a DNA test just for fun and discovered that my sister Maddie has a different father. That rocked our world and left everyone stunned. She was the only one who reacted with real fear. Maddie begged us to keep it from our parents, so out of compassion and shock, we agreed. Since that day, I have carried this secret like a hidden storm cloud. Every time Mom reminisces about my childhood birthday, or Dad tells a family joke, I feel like a fraud pretending everything is normal. Maddie wields that secret like a weapon. She is 30, with a bachelor's degree but no job, living rent-free at home and acting like the queen of our crowded house. No one dares call her out because she steamrolls anyone in her path, and our parents still tiptoe around her moods for fear of her emotional outbursts. She also hates men with a fiery passion. Whenever I mention my husband Daniel or our sister Emily mentions her new boyfriend Chris, Maddie unloads cruel jabs even before she meets them. My husband and I both have chronic illnesses and guard our energy carefully, so we skip long family events to recover. Emily did the same after helping Chris move last month, but Mom sent a guilt-laced message asking how we could refuse just 3 hours of family time. Daniel sent a calm reply explaining our limitations, and that was enough to set Maddie off. She unleashed a screaming tirade over the phone, charging me like I had betrayed her more than a sibling should. Daniel snapped back and told her to go to hell. It felt thrilling to see someone finally stand up to her, but when the dust settled, everyone blamed me for causing drama. I have watched my sisters shrink back over the months, too afraid to speak up, and family dinners have become tense theater rather than celebrations. I still remember that day when our parents cracked a joke about revealing buried family secrets during the DNA call. So maybe they already suspect or quietly know what happened. We have no idea how Maddie was conceived. It could have been a terrible violation or just an unplanned moment in an unpredictable relationship. We respect her privacy and held our silence, but she never grants us that courtesy. Our sister bond is fractured by fear and falsehood. I am exhausted from managing her every reaction and playing diplomat to her emotional tantrums. I do not know what comes next or how to heal this family. But I need to ask, has anyone else ever lived under a sibling's rule only to be blamed for standing up to them? A story from No number 4192.
I feel your pain, OP, carrying that heavy DNA secret alone and tiptoeing through family memories, and I am so sorry you have been silenced by fear, and deserve the freedom that comes when you finally speak your truth.
I wonder if Maddie's real motive was to keep everyone guessing, so when Daniel finally called her bluff, she snapped harder at the OP to reclaim that power, proving that silent control was what she craved all along.
Oh girl, this is like a live-action soap where Maddie's throwing shade non-stop and keeps running the show. So grab your popcorn because watching OP finally set a boundary is the drama we all needed.
OP, enough with tiptoeing around Maddie's temper. You owe it to yourself to prioritize your own peace and let the rest of the family swallow their feelings when you stand firm.
I was sick and he ghosted me. Can our relationship survive? I am Anna, and I am 27 years old. and I have been bedridden for days with a fierce fever, zero appetite, and no energy to even reach for my phone. My partner Ben, who is 29, had the day off exactly when I needed help most. He called me early to say he failed a major exam, and I felt awful for him because I know how hard he worked. He can absolutely retake it, but instead of coming over or even checking in, he disappeared to process his disappointment alone. He did not text or call again, and I was left shivering under my blanket, unable to cook or take care of myself. I sent him multiple messages spelling out that I could barely move and needed someone to bring me soup and water. Still nothing. His silence left me feeling abandoned and questioning whether I was overreacting. Feeling desperate, I dialed my mother Linda, hoping she would at least validate how alone I felt. To my shock, she sided with Ben, saying I needed to understand his sadness and that I was being unempathetic. It stung to hear her imply my own pain and vulnerability did not matter when he was upset. She made it sound like my desire for a simple check-in or a hot meal was unreasonable. I am not asking Ben to fix my health or sweep me off my feet with a grand gesture. I only needed someone to drop off leftovers, sit with me for a few minutes, and ask how I was feeling. That is basic care in any relationship when one partner can barely stand. He would still have hours to himself, but at least it would be inside our home with me not feeling deserted. That kind of support is the foundation I thought we had built over 12 years together, but this moment exposed me to a pattern that terrifies me, walking away from someone at their most vulnerable. I grew up watching my own father vanish whenever I got sick, so I did not know what healthy boundaries really looked like. Now I am left wondering if I can ever feel safe with someone who picks his own comfort over my needs. If Ben cannot show up for me now, can I truly trust him to stay by my side when real crisis hits? The story for 4 minutes.
I feel your heartbreak, the OP, and it is so valid to expect care when you are sick, because vulnerability deserves compassion, and building healthy boundaries means communication and support must flow both ways.
I wonder if the OP maybe piled on pressure with those repeated messages, so he ducked out to guard his sanity, but that does not excuse leaving a sick partner stranded.
I cannot believe the OP's mother told the OP to sympathize with a guy who ghosted her while she was sick. As if that is normal adult behavior.
I think the OP needs to stop excusing bad behavior. Realize that a partner who abandons you at your weakest breaks the contract of love, and demand the care she deserves, or move on.
My boyfriend humiliated me at a concert, drunk meltdown. I bought tickets to see my favorite band reunite, and I was overjoyed. My boyfriend Jake heard about it from his friend Raphael, and Raphael flew in so we planned to meet him before the concert. I was rushing to get ready because Jake kept wanting to sleep with me, but he ordered an Uber before I was done, which left me frazzled. Because he rushed me out, I barely had time to ask why he brought 2 extra White Claws. And when we missed our train, he ran into a store to grab more drinks without checking with me. Earlier he had accidentally squeezed my neck, and even though I told him that triggers me from past trauma, he brushed it off. We drank on the train, and I stuck to water because I wanted to remember every moment. At the venue, I turned down another drink hoping Jake would stay present. Raphael invited 3 friends I did not know, and I felt tense because I am awkward in groups, and I counted on Jake to back me up. But he was nowhere to be found. Jake joked loudly to them that I liked awkward guys and would try to sleep with them, which mortified me. Before we hit merch, we joked about a friend who once matched with me on Tinder, and when I made a thinking face, Jake exploded in jealousy, prompting a public argument where he yelled at me to respect his boundaries. He followed up with a panicked apology hug which made me bristle. Once the show started, he danced erratically, cried, and then came up behind me pressing his arm around my throat again, making me hit his arm to break free. Trembling, I told him I needed space so he went to talk to a table of 40-year-old men. After 20 minutes I found him and told him to cut down on drinks, and he said I was overreacting, so I walked off to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw him sobbing in Raphael's arms, and Raphael told me I needed to be nicer, which angered me since he never dealt with Jake's rehab meltdowns. His friend's girlfriend invited me to hang, but I said I was going home. Jake followed me out, screaming swear words in front of kids until a female guard stepped in and ordered him to leave me alone. A few hours later, Jake showed up at my place, pounding on the door to explain why he cried, but I refused to talk, reminded him to keep his voice down for my roommates, and he left, telling me to have a nice life. He texted the next day to talk, which I ignored, and I still feel embarrassed and unsure if I did the right thing. A story from Lonely Girl Gasto Ave.
I'm so sorry the OP had her special night hijacked by Jake's jealousy and lack of respect for her boundaries, and I admire how bravely she stood up for herself despite feeling vulnerable.
I wonder if the OP's decision to ignore Jake's tears was too harsh, or could his meltdown be a sign he genuinely needs help rather than just blaming him for embarrassing her?
I can't get over Jake's boohoo cry fest in front of a crowd while the OP had to flee to the bathroom. That is hysterical cringe and television gold.
The OP should have cut Jake off the minute he disrespected her throat boundaries and turned her concert into his sobbing therapy session. No excuses.
My wife turned out to be intersex. Shocking discovery. I'm Alex, 31. My wife Sarah, 28. And I have 2 kids, but lately the spark in our bedroom kept flickering out. Last month, I told her I felt unwanted without more intimacy. She teared up, said she wanted to fix it, and even tried herbal libido gummies. I also urged her to get her hormones checked. The first blood panel came back shocking. Sarah's estrogen was extremely low, while her testosterone was sky high for a woman. The doctor actually asked whether she was taking steroids. She laughed it off and he ordered a retest. Although Sarah looks conventionally feminine, B-cup chest and soft curves, she's always had rougher skin, a few stray beard hairs, and tomboy habits from childhood. Those clues made the specialist suspect hidden testicular tissue. So he booked a chromosome study and warned us it might reveal an intersex mosaic. Sarah broke the tension by joking I'd be gay on paper, and we both cracked up through our nerves. We were stunned she'd managed 2 pregnancies with those hormone numbers. Monday's repeat lab confirmed the same odd levels, and an ultrasound found a 6-centimeter mass beneath her left ovary. She agreed to a biopsy on the spot. While we waited, the doctor started estrogen injections to shield her heart and bones from the excess testosterone. Sarah felt calmer after the very first shot. A second specialist rolled out polycystic ovary syndrome. The biopsy finally solved the mystery. 2 small, undescended testicles. Relief flooded us. It wasn't cancer, just an unexpected feature. Because surgery might damage her ovary, we've decided to leave the tissue in place and manage everything with medication so her fertility stays intact. Sarah is happier than I've ever seen her, saying it feels like a second, more authentic puberty. A follow-up karyotype showed the standard 46XX female profile, so we still don't know why testes formed. Next up is a genetic scan for the SRY gene that triggers male development. Despite the unanswered questions, we're oddly excited. Life is wild, but we're grateful for supportive doctors, and for each other, as we step into this new chapter together. A story from Throwaway 981488623.
I feel your bravery, the OP, as you held Sarah through this unexpected discovery, and I admire how your love and trust guided you both toward hope and healing.
I have to ask the OP whether he actually thought life would stay ordinary when he and Sarah are living proof that real life can deliver the craziest plot twists.
I am dying that the OP and Sarah get to star in their own medical soap opera while loving each other through every wild twist.
I am telling the OP that sugarcoating this will not help, and he must face reality head-on by learning the facts and standing firm for well-being of Sarah.
My 71-year-old sugar daddy just proposed. I first signed up as a sugar baby last year because I was drowning in tuition and living expenses. My college friend Lily told me about Elite Companion, a professional agency with supervised first dates and contract renewals every 6 months. It felt strange, but safer than the horror stories I had heard. Within 6 weeks, a man named Greg chose my profile. He is 71, 6'1", silver-haired, and shockingly fit. During our agency-supervised dinner at a quiet upscale restaurant, he did not flaunt his wealth. He asked about my life, my dreams, and listened. On the drive home, I realized I was actually smiling. Greg told me he had tried this before, but never asked anyone to renew because they got obnoxious. He said I stood out for being quiet, respectful, soft-spoken. He confessed his big house felt empty now that his kids and grandkids barely visited. He missed company, affection, intimacy. Honestly, it sounded lonely. He offered to cover my tuition, bills, rent, and even assigned a driver to drop me at campus so I could focus on coursework. A month later, I moved into a guest suite in his home under official agency approval. The routine felt cozy. We watched old movies. He held me on his lap. We talked for hours. Yes, we have been intimate. He always asked first and respected any boundary. If I said no, he kissed my forehead and hugged me. There was no pressure, no expectation. After one evening together, I drifted to sleep in his arms, peaceful in a way I never expected. Last night, after we had been intimate, he whispered, "I love you," in that familiar hushed voice. Then, softly, he asked me to marry him. No ring, no grand speech, just a quiet proposal. He said our bond feels deeper than any contract, that he sees me as more than a sugar baby, and that he loves me as a person. My mind spun. I did not answer. I curled into his chest and eventually drifted off. This morning I woke in his guest room, heart pounding. At lunch I told Greg I am only 20, fresh in my first year of college, and not ready for marriage. I admitted I care for him but cannot call it love. He listened, sighed, and gently apologized if he had made me uncomfortable. He said he understands, respects my decision, and would renew our arrangement if I want. I agreed, relieved that honesty did not break us. Now, I head back to textbooks with a clearer heart and a more honest connection with Greg. A story from
I feel the OP's confusion juggling her studies and this unexpected romance, and I admire how bravely she expressed her needs while protecting her heart.
I wonder if Greg's proposal is more about control than love. And I think the OP might be underestimating how this arrangement could shape her future in unexpected ways.
This tale reads like a rom-com mashup where the OP's tuition gets paid and her grandpa figure wants a ring, and Netflix will never match this level of drama.
The OP needs to remember she is 20 and has her whole life ahead. She should not let a 71-year-old's proposal derail her education and independence.
Why I am 30 and totally turned off by my 33-year-old husband. Ever since I was 21, when I met Mark, I felt sparks, but it was steady enough to keep us satisfied for 6 years, until our 2-year-old daughter arrived and everything fell apart. I am 30 now, and for a long time we had comfortable sex that always led to my orgasm, but never thrilled me the way I have experienced before. After childbirth, I endured weeks of healing from tearing and stitches, working full-time, juggling diapers, and sleepless nights while he still expected intimate favors, and barely acknowledged my pain. I gradually fell into resentment, but I hoped once I healed and cut down to part-time work, we could restore the spark. Instead, Mark, who is 33, rushes through any attempted sex, stops mid-thrust, grabs my hips to prevent me from continuing, and gives up as soon as he loses stamina. I can only reach climax by taking matters into my own hands. I have had calm, no-pressure talks during the day, whispered suggestions in the bedroom, and even shared videos of techniques I like, but he never tries. Meanwhile, he parades off to a weekly guys' night and plans overnight trips without me despite my pleas to skip them. 2 weeks ago, I finally took my own one night away, 30 hours of sweet escape, but he treated it like some ledger where we are now even and booked another weekend trip. His only other touch is a desperate grab for quick sex, and if I say no, I get nothing. No kiss, no cuddle, no check-in. My friends tell me it must be the ick, but I am devastated that the man I love feels like a stranger. I want a stable home for our child and I still care deeply about him, but I feel like I am running on empty, trapped between duty and disgust. I am too young to resign myself to a sexless marriage where every gentle touch makes me cringe, but every attempt to fix things ends in my frustration. How can I stay married to a husband who has lost all interest in my pleasure? A story from thrower_whelpcool.
OP, I feel the weight of your heartbreak, and you deserve tenderness and passion without apologies as you navigate this painful crossroad.
Maybe the OP keeps demanding fireworks without asking what burdens her husband, and I wonder if she has ever considered his own insecurities and exhaustion.
Girl, the OP is stuck in a rom-com nightmare where her husband treats sex like a drive-through pit stop, leaving her craving a lead character, not a cameo performance.
The OP has to decide whether to demand genuine effort from her husband, or stop making excuses and walk away, because doing nothing lets her resentment rule her life.
My mom kicked me out with my newborn 5 days after giving birth. I am a 29-year-old named Amelia, who gave birth 5 days ago to my son Noah. My husband Mark and I met in college and have been together for 6 years. Before parenthood, we juggled demanding careers and traveled the world as a childless couple, so last year we devoured every parenting book and signed up for prenatal classes to feel ready. We planned a vaginal birth, but complications led to an emergency cesarean, and I needed a blood transfusion. My abdomen throbbed and I felt bruised and exhausted, but I was relieved Noah arrived healthy. When he cried and I froze with panic, I was grateful my mother Linda and my mother-in-law Nancy visited daily to change diapers and soothe him. Nancy quietly brought me tea and encouragement, and Mark merged his paternity leave with his vacation days while we hired a helper named Emily to clean a few hours each week. When the doctors cleared me to go home, Linda offered her spare room, so we packed our things and headed to our house. My brothers Jake and Luke both insisted I take their rooms. Mark returned home to grab missing supplies and I tried to map in Jake's room holding Noah. Almost immediately, Linda began slamming doors and dragging furniture with an ugly scowl. She burst in, yanked my hospital bag from the bed and dumped my baby blanket by the door. She snapped that she would not tolerate any noise or crying while she slept. Earlier she had boasted to Nancy about being the perfect grandma, but her kindness vanished the moment I arrived. Feeling betrayed and overwhelmed by postpartum insecurity, I broke down crying as I clutched Noah. My father Tom raced over and loaded us into his car to drive back to our apartment. Later, Jake and Luke called to offer meals, errands, and baby care whenever we needed. My dad confronted Linda, who brushed me off as an attention seeker. I learned not to lean on her when I'm vulnerable, but to trust Mark, Nancy, and my brothers as my true support system. A story from Fit Vermicelli 875-9.
I am so sorry. The OP felt abandoned by her mother at her most vulnerable moment, and I want her to know it is okay to seek help from those who truly love her.
I am wondering if Linda saw Nancy stealing her thunder and decided to one-up her by pushing the OP out to prove she was the ultimate grandma.
I am picturing Linda as that friend who brags about hosting but turns around and treats her guest like an inconvenience, and I cannot stop laughing at the absurdity.
The OP needs to set firm boundaries with her mother and stop pretending Linda's cruelty is anything other than selfish manipulation.
She refused to sleep with me because I joined jujitsu. Here is how we worked it out. I woke up to a text from Emma one morning saying she was so dumb for making a problem out of nothing. I teased her that she could be dumb sometimes and saw laughing emojis from her. Years ago, I had never seen her laugh like that. Actually, we spun off from texting that morning into a big afternoon talk once I picked her up from work. Emma admitted she had been jealous that someone else had been in that position with me, and then she dropped a bombshell. She didn't want to sleep with me or show me affection anymore because I had signed up for a jujitsu class. I stayed calm and suggested we hash it out. She agreed her fit had been over the top for two main reasons. It was just martial arts training for self-defense and nothing sexual, and she realized it made no sense. I reminded her that no matter what, hormones, stress, or rough periods, shutting me out and letting that build into a wall was not an option. She owned up to her mood swings lately and said that her periods had been so bad that I had even made an online post months ago asking for advice, and her parents had urged her to see a gynecologist. So she agreed to see a doctor and booked that appointment right away. I also made it clear that if something that small ever wrecked us again, we would have to talk about where this relationship was heading. To lighten the tension, I showed her some blunt feedback I had gotten from strangers online, which she admitted served as the reality check she needed. Then I suggested we play one of the jujitsu games I teach in class, where I pull guard and she tries to escape. She rolled with it, laughed harder than I had seen in ages, and jumped up, shocked, saying she had no idea why she'd had a problem in the first place. We booked our first couples jujitsu class for next Tuesday, and she promised to schedule that gynecologist visit as soon as possible. We feel closer now, and I will update if anything else happens. Truth is, we have been together for nearly 2 years without any fight this intense, and I still can't believe a jujitsu class almost derailed us. It taught me how quickly trust can wobble over something silly. I feel grateful we found a fun solution instead of letting it fester. Now we can laugh about it, both at home and on the mats. A story from dramatic_succotash 54.
I love how the OP held space for Emma's insecurity, validating her feelings first and calmly guiding her back to common sense. Such a beautiful mix of heart and reason.
I find it wild that Emma nearly ghosted the OP over jujitsu. What if you'd taken cooking lessons or salsa steps? Would she flip the same way? I smell a double standard here.
If I'm being real, it's hilarious that she turned into a jujitsu critic until she ended up wrestling and realized it's just a weirdly fun workout, like complaining about pizza toppings then eating the whole pie.
The OP was right to call this out. Let's be honest, letting a martial arts hobby shut down intimacy is a red flag, and I respect that he drew a line instead of letting passive-aggressive silence fester.
Am I the jerk for helping a beggar at the grocery store, then bailing? I'm Alex. On my way into the neighborhood grocery store, a woman named Maria stopped me, pleading for help buying essentials for her kids. I told her I preferred purchasing items directly instead of handing out cash. That way I'd know the money went to groceries, not alcohol. Maria insisted on coming along. The moment we stepped inside, she made a beeline for the laundry aisle and grabbed the biggest jug of detergent on the shelf, a $30 or $40 brand, explaining she had to wash her daughter's clothes. I hesitated but nodded. Then she veered to the toiletry section and swept name-brand shampoo, conditioner, and body wash into her arms, ignoring cheaper store brands. Within minutes, she was clutching 7 or 8 premium items that easily totaled close to $100. At the checkout line, my nerves spiked. While we waited, I imagined my card maxing out on things I'd never buy for myself. Finally, I mumbled an apology, abandoned the cart, and slipped out the door. Maria stared after me, stunned, while I ducked into a smaller market down the block to finish my own shopping. Later I checked my balance and saw the splurge wouldn't have wrecked my budget, which only deepened the guilt. Was Maria scamming me for a free shopping spree? Or did I just humiliate a mother in need? I wanted to do a good deed. Instead, I bolted and left her hanging. Am I the jerk? A story from illustrious_job1458.
I'm feeling all your tension here, OP, because wanting to show kindness yet ending up feeling duped is heartbreaking, so why not drop Maria a quick note to explain what happened and maybe ease both your worries?
Look, OP, maybe Maria was a desperate mom just trying to care for her kids and you bolted on her at the worst moment, so instead of calling a scam, maybe you're the one who ghosted a genuine plea and need to face that possibility.
Girl, the OP became Maria's personal shopper during a premium haul and then ghosted her faster than a bad blind date. This grocery aisle sitcom is gold.
OP, you panicked and bailed like a pipsqueak. If you wanted to help, you had to own it, or say no up front. Grow up and learn to set boundaries, instead of ghosting someone in need.
Passenger refuses to move from my seat? My sneaky revenge unfolds. Last week, I took a late evening flight from Athens to London after visiting relatives, and I was completely exhausted by the time I boarded. I chose a window seat so I could lean my head against the fuselage and drift off to sleep. The plane was full, and overhead bins were slammed as passengers squeezed into their spots. When I reached my row, I found a guy wearing oversized noise-canceling headphones in my window seat. I told him he was in my seat, but he stared ahead without reaction. Assuming the headphones blocked my voice, I tapped him gently on the shoulder, but he did not acknowledge me. Even after a second tap, he stayed rigid, and I realized he was awake yet ignoring me. Deciding to avoid drama, I slid into the middle seat beside him, and felt my frustration simmer as I muttered under my breath. A few minutes later, a young woman settled into the aisle seat beside me with a friendly smile and began chatting. She explained that her friend Kelly was booked in the window seat in the row behind us and asked if I would swap so they could sit together. I agreed without hesitation and noticed Kelly was a plus-size woman with a warm laugh. As I rose to move, I caught the headphone passenger turning around in alarm and shooting me a pleading look that begged, "Please do not do this." I ignored his silent protest and made my way to the window seat Kelly had. I spent most of the flight with my eyes closed trying to squeeze in some rest, but occasionally opened one eye to check the scene ahead. I felt a rush of satisfaction each time I saw Kelly comfortably spreading across both seats, while the headphone passenger was jammed against the fuselage wall and looked flushed with discomfort. I pictured him replaying his mistake, and hoped he learned a lesson about claiming the correct seat or simply responding when someone taps your shoulder. In the end, I leaned back grinning to myself, content that I had quietly exacted my revenge without causing a big scene. A story from Red Phantom 000.
I feel for the OP has pure exhaustion and frustration when the passenger ignored his taps and claimed the wrong seat, and I admire how he turned that awkward moment into a quiet victory he can smile about later.
Sure, the OP scored a smug seat swap revenge, but did he really think through jamming that headphone passenger? Or was he just reveling in another passenger feeling squeezed?
Girl, the OP pulled a seat swap heist harder than a heist movie and left the headphone guy squeezed like a sardine jammed in the wall while he lounged behind his plus-size pal like a boss.
Look, this passive revenge was petty and self-serving, and if the OP really cared about fairness, he would have flagged that guy instead of punishing a stranger with discomfort, just for a smug smile.
I broke up over tattoos, and my ex thinks we are still together. I dated Sarah for just under a year, and for the most part things were easy. Lazy Sunday mornings, gym dates, binging shows we both loved, until the tattoo question slipped into conversation. Early on she mentioned, almost offhand, that she'd always dreamed of a few tasteful pieces. My stomach dropped. I've never liked tattoos. The idea of permanent ink genuinely turns me off. I tried to sound calm while admitting they're a deal break for me. Your body, your choice, I said, but I probably couldn't stay in a relationship if you got one. The comment triggered 3 days of chilly silence. Stiff text replies, clipped goodnights, the kind of tension that hums inside every shared room. On day 4, she exhaled and promised to shelve the plan. We thought, and life rolled on. I applauded when she deadlifted a personal record, cheered when she bleached her hair platinum even though I preferred brunette. She, for her part, joked that she'd dump me if I ever quit the gym and let myself go. But I never took the barb seriously. 2 months ago, out of nowhere, she texted, "Still thinking about that tattoo." I gently reminded her of my hard boundary, hoping the subject would fade again. Instead, a work trip offered the perfect loophole. While I spent a week at my cousin Mike's place, Sarah and her best friend Jenna booked an all-day session. I walked back into her apartment and froze. Her left arm was an angry red sleeve of fresh ink, every inch wrapped in plastic film and oozing ointment. She barely looked up from the couch. "Surprise," she said, half smirking. Jenna, apparently, had convinced her I was being controlling. They'd raced the clock to finish before I got home. When I asked why my feelings didn't matter, she shrugged. "You'll get over it." We exploded into the loudest fight of our relationship. She locked herself in the bathroom, shouting that I was shallow. I realized I couldn't sign another lease debating where her next piece of art might go. I packed a duffel and left that night. The silence lasted 3 weeks. Today she called, voice sugary, suggesting I move back in and call this little drama square. I told her we were finished. She accused me of being too proud, then tried sexting new photos, inked arm front and center, to reel me back. The tattoos killed every spark. I deleted the pics, blocked her everywhere, and kept walking. It's wild how fast respect can evaporate, but the relief I feel tells me I made the right call. A story from Chicken Wing Priest.
Honey, I feel all that moment when she inked over your trust cut deep, and it is okay to stand firm on self-respect even if it meant walking away from someone you once adored.
I wonder if Sarah pulled that sleeve stunt just to test the OP's nerve and create chaos. And honestly, I am here for the raw theatrics.
The OP's ex turned her arm into a walking canvas and a tantrum factory, and I cannot stop picturing that scabby sleeve as the season's hottest drama accessory.
The OP set a boundary. Sarah crushed it with ink and attitude. So he did exactly what anyone should do, and walked away instead of negotiating disrespect.
Am I the jerk for not inviting my nephew to my son's birthday party? I am 35-year-old Emily, and I am the mom of 14-year-old Cillian. Last year, I hosted a big birthday with cousins and friends. I ordered a fancy custom cake for $140 from a local bakery. It was blue and silver with dragon scales and was the design that Cillian loved. When it was time to sing and cut the cake, I marched to the fridge and found that half the cake was gone. Icing was smeared across the shelf. My sister Lisa, who was 44, just laughed when her 16-year-old son Robbie said he ate it because he was hungry. That afternoon, I had served wings, pizza, veggie trays, chips and sodas, but nothing stopped Robbie, who has battled binge eating since he was 13 and weighs around 250 pounds, from devouring half a cake that could have fed 20 guests. I was furious, watching my son left cake less and guests nibbling a Walmart replacement cake that I grabbed in a panic. I even offered Robbie the extra slices from the backup cake, but he said he had enough. Later, I called Lisa and demanded she reimburse me for the bakery cake, but she accused me of fat phobia. That stung because I have never once shamed him for his weight. I texted my siblings in our family chat to vent, and then my mother called to ask why I was making such a fuss, and my aunt tried to intervene, but Lisa refused to calm down. This year, Cillian begged for a low-key friends-only party, with just 2 of his closest cousins, because he felt humiliated by Robbie's teasing uninvited guests and the cake scandal. I told my siblings we would host only that group, and sent polite notes. Most of them understood, but Lisa exploded accusing me of excluding Robbie because of his weight, and then launched a public rant on Facebook, tagging every aunt and uncle. Now I am drowning in angry calls and passive-aggressive messages, and every family gathering feels like walking on eggshells. I have been second-guessing my decisions every time I shop for decorations because I am worried Lisa might crash the party and make a scene, and even Cillian noticed I seemed tense unpacking balloons as his birthday approached. I care about Robbie and hate seeing him hurt, but I also promised Cillian a worry-free celebration and feel trapped between loyalty to my nephew and duty as a mother. Is there a middle ground I am missing, and am I the jerk for not inviting Robbie to Cillian's birthday? A story from throwaway 12389009098.
Sweetie, the OP had every right to protect Cillian's feelings after what he went through, and it is normal to feel torn between mother's love for a child and compassion for Robbie. Maybe a one-on-one outing could help Robbie feel included later and heal family tensions.
The OP is clearly in the right, but what if Robbie never actually apologized and this is just the OP protecting a gossip war? Could Lisa's Facebook rant reveal some deeper envy or family power play that the OP is not even noticing?
Girl, Robbie eating half a cake is the ultimate party foul. He basically turned that custom dragon cake into his personal midnight snack, and now we have a full-blown family soap opera.
The OP needs to stop tiptoeing and call this what it is. Her sister poor parenting left Robbie feeling entitled to devour the cake, and the OP owes Cillian a boundary. This is not about fat phobia. It is about respect and consequences.
I just broke down working from home. My raw confession. I'm Jake, a work-from-home dad with sleepless nights, Deadlines stacking up, toddler Max tugging at my leg, and wife Emily's daily breakdowns to manage. One afternoon, I finally snapped over grinding through emails. My head's in a fog, I can't focus, I've impulse eaten thousands of empty calories, and I hate everything and everyone. I won't confess to Emily since she'd just ramp up the guilt. Instead, I cracked open a beer, shoved down my rage, and plastered on a smile for Max, who deserves his best dad even though I'm blowing off work I'll never catch up on. And I'm furious at people who say it's okay to fall apart. At my age, collapsing just means you're blamed for every slip and tested until you break. The only way forward feels like pretending to hold everything together. The story from Amos.
I can feel the OP's exhaustion like a heavy blanket weighing down my heart, and my heart breaks for him while I gently remind him that taking a moment for himself, a quiet walk or deep breath, could be a lifeline.
I bet the OP's real fear is that leaning on Emily would brand him weak, and yet hiding it is exactly what's cracking him even more.
Girl, the OP promising to catch up Monday is like someone vowing diet starts Monday. Just hand him donuts, cue his favorite playlist, and let him laugh instead of falling apart.
The OP needs to ditch the beer and excuses and face the fact that real strength is asking for help before you break, not nursing resentment until you crack.
My stepdad tried to crash my birth. I had to shut him down. I have to spill how my peaceful family turned tense when my mom Linda married Mike, a white guy who seemed perfect until he wasn't. I was 10 when they met at a friend's 4th of July barbecue. I had always liked him because he did all the classic stepdad things, taking us for ice cream, fixing my bike, showing up at all the soccer games, so I let my guard down. Mike stepped in smoothly, driving us kids to school, coaching soccer, always kind to my younger sisters and brothers. But by high school, his kindness flipped to indifference. At birthday dinners he'd ignore me, or make me excuse myself to fetch drinks. He started rolling his eyes when I spoke up at dinner, and made offhand asides telling me he used to be racist until he met my mom, that left me fuming. It got awkward when he bragged about not being racist anymore right in front of me, as if my feelings didn't matter. On my 16th birthday, I was barefoot and in tears when I fled down the back stairs and he chased me with firecrackers. He laughed it off as a joke, until it wasn't. I moved out soon after, and my mom seemed blinded by love, so I bit my tongue until that explosive birthday showdown. At 19, I got pregnant and felt terrified. As I counted down to my due date, Mike suddenly became fixated on witnessing my labor. I flat out said no, and Mom agreed. One afternoon, he cornered me and claimed Mom told him I said yes, so I sat them both down and reminded them I would only have Mom and the doctors in the delivery room. He swore he understood. When real labor hit and the nurses asked who I wanted beside me, I said just Mom. Mike burst into profanity, slammed his hand on the wall, and marched out without a word. Even now, I can't stop laughing at how obsessed he was about witnessing my birth. That memory still cracks me up. A story from Mom Vegas 1984.
I'm so proud of the OP for trusting her instincts and saying no. And I promise anyone listening that setting boundaries is an act of self-love that can bring peace and healthier family dynamics.
I'm calling foul on Mike's twisted power play in the delivery room saga and on the OP's mom for letting him rewrite her daughter's consent, because someone needed to call out that creep for what he was doing.
I can't stop picturing the OP barefoot and screaming as Mike lobbed firecrackers at her. It is pure cartoon chaos, and I'm here for every ridiculous second.
The OP made a simple, reasonable decision, and Mike's hissy fit exposed his selfish insecurity. So he should drop the act, respect your space, and grow up already.
I refused to hide my tattoos at my boyfriend's family dinner. Am I the jerk? My name is Emma, and I'm 21. I'm proud of my full sleeves and thigh art that tell my story of travel and heartbreak. My boyfriend Jacob, 26, fell for me just as I am, but recently asked me to cover up at a family dinner. He warned that his grandparents are very old school and might stiffen at my tattoos, and he didn't want an awkward evening. I bristled at the notion of hiding my skin to keep them comfortable and told him respect has to go both ways. Jacob accused me of overreacting, but said he still wanted me there. I agreed to attend while holding my ground on the sleeves issue. When he saw I wouldn't swallow my pride, he shocked me by asking me not to come if I was going to be difficult. That stung like a fresh tattoo and left me pacing the apartment, imagining the silent judgment as I peeled off a sweater at the table. I've spent years embracing my body art, and I refuse to erase part of myself now. I wrestled with guilt over risking drama and shame over possibly offending his family, but I chose honesty over a fake calm. Now I'm stuck wondering if I was selfish for standing up for my identity, or if Jacob should have backed me up. Was I wrong to refuse to blend in? A story from Irina Vibe 08.
I hear you, the OP, and I've felt that sting of being told to shrink yourself for someone else. So, maybe a cozy heart-to-heart with Jacob's grandparents over coffee could warm their hearts, while letting you show your colors with pride.
I think the OP could have rocked a bold ink reveal mid-dinner just to force everyone to face their own bias. Who's the real awkward one then?
The OP could have sauntered in, flipped her sleeve up like a showstopper, sipped iced tea and joked, "Scared of tattoos or just bored of plain skin, Grandma?" for that comedic mic drop.
The OP is deflecting responsibility. If she'd calmly discussed expectations and boundaries with Jacob, instead of digging heels, they might have found a compromise without the drama.
Neighbor thinks I breed rats in my greenhouse? Wait till you hear this. I have lived with my husband Mark in our terrace house for 12 years, and we know rats roam the nearby farmland, so we always keep rat wire on hand. We never had rats until our neighbor Dan turned on us, when I laughed at someone calling him a bellend, and refused to chat anymore. He phoned the council over our compost bin, and even blamed us for a water leak he caused. Then Dan began telling anyone who would listen that I trap and breed rats in my 3x2-meter greenhouse. He even called an exterminator and insisted I must have a nest inside. The pest pros agreed that a breeder would smell and squeak too loudly, so they cleared us. Meanwhile, I chatted with neighbor Lisa, Dan's partner, who admitted she never saw rats either. To guard against his obsession, reinstalled cameras around the greenhouse and garden, and loudly mocked his delusion within earshot. I started logging every weird call and trespass attempt in a spreadsheet. One morning we opened a letter from Environmental Health demanding we remove a rat infestation immediately. I sent the exterminator statement to clear our name, and shot off a polite but firm email warning I would sue Dan for harassment if this kept up. We reached out to neighbors who all confirmed they saw no rats, and laughed at the absurd claim. Dan's fixation ramped up. He sent recycled plant cuttings to our door as gifts, stomped angrily with loud music, and even installed his own camera to watch our yard. He interrogated guests, pestered every council on earth, and blamed us for rotten taps, damp cellars, and woodworm in his house. I kept tending my tomatoes and peppers while planting tall, spiky, fragrant shrubs, and a colorful hedge to block his view in horticultural revenge. When Dan harassed neighbors into selling their house, I realized he needed to be stopped, so I filed a police report and assembled proof that an average person would feel harassed. His partner Lisa seems to be reining him in a bit now. Cameras, signs warning photos are illegal, and a plan for a retractable awning to seal us off have quieted him into occasional stomps and faint bass thumps. The council cleared us and apologized for its botched letter after realizing Dan's complaint was baseless. The police case lingers, but Dan's antics have eased and I can finally garden with fewer sideways glances. I even took legal advice on stalking laws and burdens of proof, so I know we have strong grounds if Dan steps over the line again. Through it all, I have learned that a good camera, a pointed spreadsheet, and a few thorny bushes can do wonders against a spiteful neighbor. A story from choice_evidence 193.
I feel for the OP's frustration and fear when Dan accused her of breeding rats in that greenhouse, and I admire how she turned cameras and hedges into her shield to protect her garden insanity.
I almost feel sorry for Dan because the OP turned her yard into Fort Knockout with cameras and spikes, and now he is convinced she is some rat overlord. Could she be fueling his mania?
I am cracking up picturing the OP hosting a rat costume party in her greenhouse with cheeses galore, while Dan prowls like a deranged Inspector Gadget hunting invisible rodents.
The OP needs to file harassment charges already instead of just hedges and cameras. It is time to make Dan accountable and stop this rat nonsense once and for all.
I opposed universal health care until my aunt's cancer shattered me. I used to never worry about health care because I've always had great insurance. But 7 months ago my life changed. My Aunt Sue, 60 years old and full of life, started having chest pain and shortness of breath, so she hurried to the doctor while her work coverage was still active. Tests showed a small tumor in her right lung, and they said we needed a biopsy right away. But 2 weeks later, her job insurance ended, and everything stalled. We scrambled for options. She applied for Social Security disability and got denied. Her daughter Emily even transferred custody of Nate, her 4-year-old boy, to Sue so she could finally qualify for Medicaid. Only after 6 long months did she get coverage again. We rushed back in for CT scans, PET scans, and biopsies. The news was a gut punch. Stage 4 cancer that had spread to both lungs and beyond. Inoperable and incurable. They told us she didn't have much time left. Watching her suffering and realizing how close she came to falling through the cracks shattered me. I felt ashamed that I'd scoffed at universal healthcare debate without ever seeing what it really costs when people lose coverage. I went online hoping to share my change of heart and maybe spark some real talk. Instead, I got met with cold insults from strangers who didn't care about my aunt's pain or my newfound empathy. It hurt to admit I was wrong and then get attacked for it. It made me sadder than my aunt's diagnosis. Spending hours on hold with government offices made my heart skip every time the phone rang. My cousins whispered we'd pay thousands out of pocket. This ordeal stripped away any illusions about fairness in a system linked to jobs and wealth. The worst part is how easily we shut each other down instead of opening up and learning. I'm not a perfect person and I don't claim to have all the answers. But if one thing can come of this mess, I want people to see what happens when you wait months for care you desperately need. And to realize that treating each other like enemies doesn't solve problems. We need to bridge these divides, not widen them. I wish my aunt more time, but for now, I'll do my best to share her story. And maybe, just maybe, change a few minds. A story from Melissa Zier 969.
I feel your pain, the OP, and I admire how you opened your heart to see the human cost of our healthcare system, turning guilt into compassion and action for those who suffer silently.
I can't decide whether to shake the OP's hand or challenge her, because this healthcare trap ensnares us all and her delayed awakening feels like a survival instinct in a rigged game.
I swear healthcare bureaucracy is like a clingy ex who promises forever and disappears when you need them most. And the OP just found herself ghosted by a system we pretend can't break hearts.
The OP's heartbreak is tragic, but useless unless she stops moaning and channels that pain into forcing real reform instead of hunting for sympathy online.
Should I quit paying child support? My ex is furious. I am Adam, dad to Luke, who is 8 years old. When Luke arrived, my marriage to his mother, Sarah, was already collapsing. We divorced before his first birthday, but stayed in separate bedrooms under one roof for several months so we could both bond with him. During Luke's first 2 years, Sarah handled nearly all daily care, while I saw him on weekends. So I paid Sarah $600 in child support every month, carried his health insurance premium, and covered a large share of his private school tuition. As Luke grew, I rebuilt my career so I could be hands-on. I left a higher-paying but rigid job for one that brings in less money yet lets me be home on weekdays. That move shifted us to roughly a 60-40 custody split. 2 years ago, after I married Emily, who teaches and tracks every household expense, we formalized an even 50-50 schedule. Luke now alternates weeks and holidays between homes. Even after that change, I kept paying the original $600. Recently, Emily and I realized that money could instead cover groceries, fuel for Luke's sports practices, and the $90 monthly coffee habit I had already quit. I asked Sarah to lower support to $250 or remove it altogether. She erupted, calling me a deadbeat and threatening to fight for full custody. Her mother piled on with insults. I explained that both homes now have 2 incomes, and that I log every expense in a budgeting app to prove my investment in Luke. I pay school fees, doctor copays, and 100% of his sports gear. Meanwhile, Luke enjoys an IPD, piles of toys, and frequent coffee shop visits at Sarah's house, and she still carries a $300 car payment and regular nail appointments. Realizing we were stuck, I apologized for sounding blunt and proposed community mediation. In April, we met with a neutral mediator. When the official formula was applied, Sarah was shocked to learn she would owe me about $100 each month under a strict 50-50 arrangement. To avoid more conflict, I waived back support and agreed to pay her $200 going forward. We also documented holiday exchanges and asked the friend of the court to review both households to ensure Luke's needs remain met. I walked out relieved. Every tuition invoice, receipt, and copay is recorded, and Luke thrives in both homes. The new agreement finally aligns with reality while keeping his well-being front and center. A story from Choice_Evidence 1983.
I'm warned that the OP tracked every penny to protect Luke's life, and I understand how scary it is to challenge Sarah while still caring for his family's heart.
I can't help but suspect Sarah's just clinging to that support line while the OP did all the real work, and now the FOC red flag will make her scorn.
I can't stop giggling picturing Sarah juggling toys, lattes, salon dates, and then facing the mediator when the OP brought his budget baby notebook.
I'm bluntly telling the OP to freeze any further payments until that FOC investigation lands and demands justification from Sarah fast.
I filed for divorce when my wife hid her secret friend with benefits for years. And after 18 years of marriage, I discovered my wife Alice's best friend Mark was actually her former friend with benefits, and she had kept their intimate past secret. My sister Carol knew and never warned me. When Alice and I started dating, we agreed to cut ties with all exes, so learning this felt like a betrayal of the deepest kind. The betrayal cut deeper because Alice and I once vowed to be each other's rock and protect our family above all. Furious and crushed, I met with a lawyer and asked Alice to move out to her parents' home, more than 1 hour away. I also arranged a DNA test for our daughter Emma and our twin boys Lucas and Ethan, because Mark and I shared the same blonde hair and blue eyes. While we waited for results, Alice cried and insisted they were mine, but I could no longer trust her. I admitted that fear and envy drove me to that DNA test, but I needed proof to quiet the voice that whispered she had left me for excitement. The test confirmed the children were mine, by blood and soul. That news brought relief and renewed anger, so I refused to change my mind about divorce. The 2-story brick house I inherited from my grandfather remains in my name and ties me to a past of Sunday bike rides and chess lessons in his sunlit kitchen. I will pay Alice $100,000 to keep a stable roof over the kids' heads. Carol begged me to forgive her, only to learn she had manipulated Alice for her own reasons and lied about that past friendship. Alice agreed to cut off Mark, block Carol, submit to a polygraph, and attend both individual and couples therapy for the kids' sake. Our best friend Steve drove 3 hours to calm me and shared his story about parents who stayed together through lies and regrets and miserable years that never healed, and his blunt words hit me like a punch in the gut, but also freed me from endless what-ifs. After reviewing old messages, Alice admitted her shame and swore she never cheated after our wedding. Scheduling the polygraph and therapy shows I still believe healing is possible if transparency becomes our foundation. Alice and I are committed to weekly couples sessions and finding a child therapist to guide Emma, Lucas, and Ethan through this upheaval. I have no family besides Carol since my parents died, and losing my sister's support felt like losing roots I did not know I needed until it was gone. The road ahead will be rocky, but I love Alice and want to protect our children, and I'm determined to fight for the chance to rebuild trust, step by step. A story from Choice_Evidence 1983.
I admire how the OP stood firm in the face of betrayal and protected his family, and I feel every pang of heartbreak he experienced when Alice and Carol broke his trust.
I wonder if the OP's rigid rule about exes planted the seed for deceit, and if Alice was trapped by a double standard that the OP never questioned until it exploded.
I am cracking up at the idea that Carol played puppet master in this soap opera, and the OP had to launch a DNA raid like an ex's SWAT team just to get answers.
The OP needs to stop tiptoeing around his own insecurities. Face the fact that trust is earned, not demanded. And if he cannot handle a conversation about past mistakes, he might as well pack a bag and call it quits now.
My ex married without inviting our daughter? Emma's dad, Brad, barely sees her beyond a few hours once a month. He's been with Janet for 5 years, and when I asked about parenting time, he surprised me by saying he moved in January without notice and mentioned he and Janet had separated. I pressed him, but he shut down. After picking Emma up from her grandma's house, I asked what was happening, since sudden changes upset Emma. Brad's mom confessed that Brad and Janet secretly married in December last year, bought a house, and then Janet backed out because she did not want to stay married. I was stunned, and Emma heard it all. His mom was shocked he said nothing and hopes he will focus more on Emma. That night I checked our messages and realized Emma was with me on their wedding day, and Brad never asked to include her. His parents got to save the date, so he intentionally left Emma out of his own wedding. My shock turned to pure rage. When I married my husband in 2021, Emma was our flower girl, walking me down the aisle with special vows just for her. Now I feel only anger and sadness. Emma is in therapy, and I mentioned this to her therapist, but I'm letting Emma choose if she wants to talk. I am furious and want to scream at Brad for excluding his own child. How would you react, and is my rage justified? A story from
The original poster is so brave for uncovering the truth and defending Emma. Her shock and anger are valid, and she deserves all the support as she navigates this painful betrayal.
Maybe Brad panicked or thinks Emma would be a hassle, but the original poster owes it to Emma to demand clear answers and set firm boundaries, or he will keep sidelining her without remorse.
Girl, skipping your own kid like she was a party crasher? That's next level gonzo. The original poster should charge him admission for every tiny tear and send him the bill for some parenting lessons.
It's time for the original poster to stop the melodrama and take action. Hire an attorney, lock in concrete custody terms, and make sure Brad can't pull this kind of stunt again.
My wife hates her engagement ring. Time for an upgrade? Ever since Emma and I tied the knot at the courthouse after 5 months engaged, we've been married for 4 years with our daughter Lily toddling around and another baby on the way. We're both fairly young. She's 26 and I'm 30. And we just bought our first home. Lately, Emma has been tagging me on social media with pictures of rings she likes, and she can't stand her original engagement ring anymore. It's a natural mined diamond double-banded halo of 0.25 carat that she chose years ago, but now she craves the sleek look of thin gold solitaires topped with a big diamond. She's demanding at least a 3.5 to 4 oval lab diamond set on gold. Our first ring cost $5,600, but the new one is about $8,000. I have $20,000 in savings and selling the old ring helps, but spending so much seems reckless. Emma won't wear the ring. She hates and insists on a push present whenever she sees a ring she actually likes. It's all she talks about, and I'm stuck trying to figure out what to do next. A story from Strange-Egg123.
I feel for the OP because he's juggling Emma's ring woes with real budget worries, so I'd suggest sitting down with her, hearing her heart, and agreeing on a thoughtful upgrade plan that shows he cares without draining their savings.
Is the OP really wrong for refusing to drain his savings for Emma's new bling? Or is he just cheap when he could easily sell the old ring and meet her halfway instead of whining online?
The OP better watch out, or Emma will be window shopping rings until he's broke, so he might as well sell that old halo, grab a bigger stone, and save himself from years of silent treatment.
Stop hesitating and pick a budget you're comfortable with. Sell the old ring and buy the new one you can actually afford so you can shut this down and focus on your family instead of endless ring regret.
Dating app shock. My date was a chatbot. I never expected to install a dating app during a whirlwind girls trip, yet my 3 best friends shoved Bumble and Hinge onto my phone before brunch. That afternoon, I matched with a man named Tom. His profile held one moody selfie, no bio, no linked socials, just silence. Still, his opening message was magnetic. What moments make life feel luminous for you? Every reply that followed sounded polished, reflective, almost poetic. My friends squealed as if I had reached the season finale of a dating show, while a small voice in my head whispered, "Chatbot." Red flags stacked up. Tom never used contractions. He echoed my own phrases back at me. He sprinkled big words, transcendent, connective, luminous, into almost every paragraph. One pal suggested a stress test. Toss him a random prompt, then double back minutes later to see if he contradicted himself. He never did. Another friend said, copy one of his lines into ChatGPT. I typed, "How do you know when someone is worth holding on to?" And the model returned an almost identical sentence, complete with the same poetic twist. Game, set, match. Artificial intelligence. Curiosity still tugged at me, so I invited Tom to a quick video call. A real face appeared, voice and all, though he kept dropping those recycled sentences as if reading cue cards. Fine, I thought, one coffee will settle this. We chose a cozy downtown bistro. The man who arrived was nothing like the soulful philosopher from my screen. He was shorter than his photo hinted, strutted in with a "where's my hug" swagger, and launched into a brag about owning mostly legal rental properties. Depth vanished. He talked for nearly 2 straight hours about himself, complaining about tenants, flexing crypto losses, fishing for compliments, without asking a single question about me. The poetic vocabulary? Gone. In its place. Bro, it is what it is. I paid for my own latte just to reclaim a scrap of dignity, hustled to my car, and scrubbed the evening out of my memory with a hot shower. Lesson learned. Real charisma survives outside a chat window, and genuine curiosity cannot be faked by copy and paste platitudes. Worst date ever, yet I gained a brand new skill. The ability to spot a digital echo long before it orders an espresso across from me. A story from Direct-Caterpillar77.
I can only imagine how icky the OP felt when she discovered Tom's heartfelt questions were all AI script. She absolutely deserved a genuine connection, not robotic fluff.
I'm thinking the OP might have been swept up in her own hype. Maybe those spiffy AI prompts spoke more to her dreams than to the real Tom, so the shock was half self-serve drama.
The OP really should have called him out sooner. No one makes it past a video chat with robotic lines without risking a total waste of time.
Am I the jerk? I booked a hotel for my family instead of taking a cramped train with my in-laws. My husband Eric and I are traveling to his sister Chloe's wedding with our 1-year-old son, Max. The plan is a small ceremony at Eric's parents' home, then a larger reception in Chloe's fiancé city. Tension has simmered since Max's birth. Eric's mother, Barbara, and Chloe once swooped in to help, but ended up critiquing my cooking, my wardrobe, and how much I held my newborn. Eric eventually ushered them out, yet every call since still includes scrutiny of Max's outfits or the tidiness of our living room. For the second leg of the celebration, Barbara pushed hard for a cramped family Airbnb and a 22-hour train ride. I worried the marathon journey would destroy Max's nap schedule and leave us all exhausted. Eric feared separate arrangements might look snooty, but I laid out how little sleep, shared bathrooms, and clashing personalities would spell disaster. After an hour of debate, he agreed that peace was worth a raised eyebrow or two, so we booked flights and a quiet hotel room. Flying a day early was bliss. We strolled museums, watched Max toddle through city parks, and ate unhurried cafe lunches. Meanwhile, the train group traded gossip and revived old inheritance feuds. Eric's cousin later messaged that the ride had dissolved into bickering about who spends too much on whom, with Eric's name tossed around. Wedding day challenges still appeared. At the reception, Barbara kept scooping up Max to show him off, then acted puzzled when he cried. I stepped in, explained that crowds overwhelm him, and reminded everyone we would rotate who held him so he felt secure. Eric backed me without hesitation. When Barbara urged us to join dawn to dusk group breakfasts, we politely declined and promised to see everyone at scheduled events. She tut-tutted, but we stuck to our boundary. The reception itself turned out lovely. Max napped on schedule, charmed distant relatives with sleepy smiles, and even earned quiet praise from an aunt who was surprised by how calm he remained. I felt a wave of relief. Eric chose our family's comfort over appearances. Barbara learned that routine matters more than photo ops, and I proved to myself that advocating for my child is not selfish. Back home, unpacking suitcases, I feel proud. Clear limits kept the trip smooth, and Max's well-being stayed front and center, exactly what a wedding weekend should reflect. A story from Choice_Evidence 1983.
I love that the OP stood up for herself and her little family with such tender strength, and showed that boundaries can be an act of love when relatives forget to respect a new mom's needs.
I'm not defending Barbara and Chloe, but seriously, if a train carriage is the ultimate family bonding session that ends in inheritance brawls, maybe crash 2 hotels and let Eric decide where his loyalty really lies.
Honey, the OP took her little squad on that glam flight while Barbara and Chloe were busy throwing shade and rehashing inheritance fights, and I'm over here booking popcorn for the drama show.
Look, the OP did what any sane parent would do, and Eric needs to cut the excuses and realize that his immediate family comes first, or he'll always be stuck playing mediator on a stranded train robbed of sleep.
My girlfriend died because I left her. Guilt is killing me. Ever since that night, I've been trapped by guilt, because I ditched my plan to drive my girlfriend home. I'm Jack, and she was Emily. She was the girl I'd loved since we were teenagers. We'd been together for 8 years and usually laughed off tiny tiffs.
That night, we hit our favorite bar with my buddies Tom and Alex. We teased each other over something trivial, and then I let my pride take over. My friends wanted to keep the party going at a late night spot, and at one point I told Emily I wasn't her chauffeur anymore. I said she could catch a ride with her friends and walked off with Tom and Alex. Emily's face twisted in anger as she headed back to our group, and that was the last time I saw her alive. Hours later, I got a phone call. Emily and 2 other friends died in a car accident on their way home. Panic hit me because I was supposed to bring her back safe. Our final memory is an argument sparked by my selfish choice. The idea that my whim doomed her is shredding me. I can't face her parents and tell them their daughter's last ride was because of my tantrum. Everyone else just sees a crash, but to me, every detail, my words, her anger, her steps away, feels like a horror scene. Now I'm booked to fly to Las Vegas in 4 days on a trip I'd promised to share with her. It feels wrong to think about packing. I know I need to leave the house, or I'll suffocate in regret. But when I close my eyes, I still see Emily storming off at the bar, and the guilt keeps ripping me apart. A story from the slimmest of shady_.
I feel your pain, OP. Emily's loss and your guilt are overwhelming, but you did what felt right in the moment, and beating yourself up won't bring her back. So please lean on friends and share your burden.
I'm not buying this guilt trip. Maybe accidents aren't personal attacks, and Emily's crash would have happened no matter what. So the OP can stop auditioning for villain and start living.
Girl, I'm dying at the OP's guilt parade. He's beating himself up like he's auditioning for a tragedy remix when accidents don't RSP. Someone cue the laugh track.
The OP's guilt is a dead end. Nobody's rewriting this crash, so he needs to face facts, stop wallowing, and seek real help before this remorse buries him alive.
My best friend cheated and now our squad is falling apart. I've been best friends with Ethan and Mia since our first year of college at 17. We were inseparable, surviving midterm meltdowns, city moves, and third-wheeling on each other's dates. Lately, Mia's behavior spiraled. She and Alex dated for 2 years, and everyone thought they were endgame. Then Mia dug up texts with her old fling, Ryan, and Alex called it quits when he saw the messages. Instead of taking time to heal, Mia signed up for Bumble within a day, lining up bar dates and late-night meetups. But she can't stop texting Alex under the table, pining for him in private chats while telling us she's over him. Ethan and I have begged her to block Ryan, but she's still entertaining his half-hearted flirty texts like they're gold. It's exhausting to watch her chase someone who gaslights her and then ghost others in turn. She ghosted James, the kind friend who adored her, dropping out of the blue and leaving him heartbroken. Now she's repeating that exact pattern with new guys. Mia's phone never stops buzzing with drunk selfies on nights out and heartfelt messages to the wrong guy. She shows up late to brunch with puffy eyes, complaining she missed 160 texts. Her stories shift so fast, she leaves us dizzy. Even Alex's friends who tried to comfort her get shrugged off for another round of flirting with Ryan. It's like watching a reality star chase a doomed storyline that ends in heartbreak. Our trio's group chat vibrates with rumors about who she's texting next. It's eaten into our plans, our trust, and frankly my faith in her judgment. I feel stuck between being her shoulder to cry on and wanting to scream at her to wake up. I can't tell if cutting her loose or sticking by her is the better move. Our friendship is fraying, and I'm losing sleep over it. A story from Affectionate Angle 172.
I totally feel your frustration and heartache, OP, because I watched my best friend chase a toxic ex at midnight and wondered how to help without hurting more. Leaning on your community and setting gentle boundaries could be your lifeline.
Maybe the OP secretly craves this circus, because who sticks around this kind of mess without some twisted thrill? What if this is all a grand friendship stress test?
I see the OP stuck watching Mia treat her love life like a spin cycle in a laundromat. Hilarious drama to binge watch, but somebody needs to hit pause or everyone ends up with tangled hearts.
The OP needs to face facts. Mia is going nowhere healthy until she stops dancing to Ryan's strings, so it's time to grow up and either kick her off that merry-go-round or walk away yourself.
This political stunt ruined my brother's future. I still can't believe what happened to my brother Alex. He spent over 5 years chasing his dream abroad. He finally got into State University, one of the top programs, with just 1 year left. Then overnight the authorities said his visa had expired and ordered him to leave immediately. He scrambled to fight back with a job offer and letters from professors. I begged to let him stay through finals, but they refused. He packed and left before his last exams. Now he's back home, and I've never seen him so hollow. He walks like a ghost and flinches in his sleep from nightmares. State University promised to transfer his credits, and Professor Kim is pushing for solutions, but nothing erases the year he lost. People whisper about political stunts, but at home it feels like despair. He did nothing wrong, yet someone used power to sabotage his future. Our family's peace is shattered, and I'm torn between anger and helpless grief. I catch myself staring at his empty desk, wrestling with guilt that I couldn't stop this from happening. Every night I lie awake as he paces our tiny living room, his silence louder than any breakdown, while I wrestle with rage and helpless prayer. All I can do is stand by him, hope he holds on, and pray this isn't the end of his journey. A story from Phoenix V0TREX_77.
I feel the OP's anguish so deeply. Watching Alex's dreams vanish to a political stunt tugs at every heartstring and makes me want to wrap them both in compassion until justice finds a way.
I'm betting the authorities targeted Alex for a power play, and I think the OP is too passive. Maybe it's time to challenge every rule that enabled the stunt and fight back louder.
I mean, the OP must feel like Alex just got ghosted by the government with no text back, and now their family dinners are more awkward than a karaoke night at a mine convention.
The OP and Alex need to stop waiting for outsiders to fix their mess and start mobilizing every resource they have, because no one's going to hand them justice on a silver platter.
Why I side with my sister's ex in their breakup. I am Alex, 26 years old. My sister, Emma, 24, has dated her high school sweetheart, Ryan, for 7 years. I have always thought of Ryan as family. He is kind, protective, and shares Emma's humor and values. Yet he battles anxiety, plus a long-running addiction to pornography and compulsive online flirting. Emma has forgiven several relapses and believed he was working on therapy. Last week, Emma and Ryan invited my partner Jordan and me to their apartment. Emma announced they had broken up, calling it a mutual pause so she could explore dating women and non-binary people. She hoped they would stay roommates, keep our friend group intact, and drop the romantic gestures. Ryan sat stiff and said almost nothing. Later, in private, he told me he felt blindsided, had urged Emma to date women while they were still together so he would not lose her, and had even planned to propose soon. I worried that living side by side would stall his healing. 2 days later, Emma shared a fuller story. While on Ryan's phone, she located a hidden folder that requires extra steps to access. It held one photo of someone we both know. The image was not explicit, but, to Emma, symbolized another secret, and the final straw after many promised changes. She omitted this detail earlier because she did not want me or Jordan to turn on Ryan. Ryan then messaged me. He apologized for installing a dating app a week after the breakup, and claimed the locked photo appeared by accident, saying his phone sometimes moves files. He added that, upon closer look, the picture was of me, clothed, and insisted it carried no sexual intent. Knowing that folder must be saved manually, I find the accident tale hard to believe. Now both are tied to my upcoming wedding. Emma is maid of honor, Ryan is best man. Emma still wants friendly outings, yet Ryan seems to be waiting for a reunion that may never come. I love them both, and dread choosing sides, but I also fear that sharing an apartment and social circle will keep Ryan stuck. How can I support each of them without betraying the other? And should I rethink their roles in the wedding so everyone can heal? A story from Direct-Caterpillar 77.
I feel the OP's loyalty to her sister is heartfelt, and I truly understand her pain, but I also see Ryan's heartbreak, and wish they would pause living together so he can heal.
I think the OP is too scared to rock the boat, but maybe Ryan deserves a reality check and should demand Emma give him genuine space instead of a headline act of friendship.
I picture the OP's group hangouts turning into a sitcom of awkward glances and forced smiles, and honestly, I'm here for the drama, but they need clear boundaries.
I say Ryan must move out right now to stop waiting in limbo, and the OP should stop enabling Emma's wishy-washiness before everyone's heart breaks further.
My fiancé won't talk to me. I'm this close to yelling. My name is Emily, and I moved in with my fiancé Jake about 1 month ago into our new condo. At 10 months into our relationship, Jake disappeared into a mute weekend, barely responding to me. He later said he was stressed and did not want to risk saying something hurtful, so he clammed up. That icy silence shock hit us a couple more times since. He says he is not mad but needs quiet to process. Last night was the worst. Jake locked himself in his home office, then reappeared at 3 in the morning in the living room, blasting television. I had to yell to get him to turn it down. This morning, he only spoke when I asked him direct questions. I feel like a ghost in my own home. I even texted his buddy Mark for hints about this mood, and my dog Lulu got more pats than me. I want to fling open that office door and scream that I hate being ignored and that he acts like a sulky kid. We have talked about this recurring freeze roughly every 4 months. He knows I hate it, but insists I need to learn to handle his silence. Fine, if he asked for space, but ghosting me without warning drives me mad. I do not know how to bring it up again without sounding like a maniac. Every time this blackout happens, I doubt our future until I forget, and it happens again. Should I just give him space or force him to actually talk?
I feel for the OP so much because I once sat on my sofa crying when my partner went silent, and I learned asking for honest communication can be a game changer.
I wonder if the OP's frustration is freaking Jake out so badly he'd rather hide than risk a real fight.
I can just see the OP dressed like a giggly drill sergeant kicking down Jake's office door and yelling, "Dismissed!" Cause that feels easier than decoding his silent treatment.
The OP has got to stop tiptoeing. Jake is ignoring her because boundaries are missing, so she needs to draw a line and demand a proper conversation now.
Holy cow, I found real sexual healing. I've been reeling ever since my aunt's passing and invited my mother Carol to stay with me and my husband Dan for a week to handle the fallout. Those 7 days felt endless as dark memories bubbled to the surface and grief clung to every corner of our little house. One afternoon midweek, I hit my breaking point. My chest was tight, my mind racing so badly I could hardly think. I remember the echo of Carol's car door slamming and my heart racing with dread before Dan wrapped me in his arms. That simple touch felt like an electric shock to my exhausted mind. It felt almost euphoric how effortlessly it swept away my panic. Carol offered to run a few errands, and I begged Dan to cuddle while I tried to rest. To my astonishment, he climbed in beside me, completely naked, and a single embrace turned into us getting intimate on the spot. Before I knew it, I climaxed in what felt like 30 seconds, a roaring, "Holy cow, I really needed this," blasting inside my head. Dan followed just after me and we scrambled into the shower together, laughter bubbling over like two teenagers sneaking away. I expected to crash into a nap, but instead I felt a flood of energy sweeping away my exhaustion. It was like the stress that had kept me paralyzed simply vanished. Dan told me later he felt the same healing jolt and admitted he'd been craving real connection without even knowing it. In the days after Carol returned home, Dan and I couldn't keep our hands off each other. We rediscovered that spark we had when we first met 13 years ago. I've tried meditation and journaling, but nothing prepared me for this. I feel more supported now than ever, and amazed that a single intimate moment could reset my mood so thoroughly. This isn't just sex for fun. It was genuine stress relief, and I'm grateful I got to experience sexual healing in real time after one of the hardest weeks of my life. A story from Understated Essence.
I feel every bit of the OP's relief and strength after that moment. I remember when my own world felt chaotic until a simple hug lit me up from the inside.
I'm thinking the OP and Dan just invented a stress cure. What if they ritualized that epic release to dodge every meltdown? Is this genius self-care or are they flirting with fire?
The OP went from tears to turbo sex therapy in 30 seconds flat, honey. That's the most efficient self-help I've ever heard. They might start charging for these grief-to-grain sessions.
Let me be blunt. The OP found a stress reset button, and ignoring it would be dumb. They should book their next intimate session like an appointment, instead of waiting for random breakdowns.
They ran a red light, hit my car and asked me not to file insurance. Am I the jerk? I am Alex, and I was driving when my light turned green, and a car driven by Jamie barreled through a red light and hit me. I pulled over to avoid blocking traffic and called the police. While I waited, Jamie drove off. When the officers arrived, I gave my statement, and they said they would check traffic cameras to find Jamie, but could not promise success. Without any contact or insurance info for Jamie, I filed a claim with my own insurance to cover repair costs, which totaled approximately $2,500, and I paid my deductible. A few days later, the police identified Jamie and shared my contact info. Immediately, Jamie texted and called asking me not to file through insurance because it would make their rates skyrocket. I felt shocked, since Jamie never tried to reach out after the crash and only contacted me once they were caught. I told Jamie I was uncomfortable handling it outside of insurance because of the damage and because they fled the scene. I later learned Jamie is in their early 20s, but that did not change what happened. I'm sticking with my insurance claim and expecting consequences the right way. A story from Representative Cup 3 to 4.
The OP's decision to go through insurance makes perfect sense, and I feel every pang of frustration they had when the other driver fled and tried to dodge responsibility.
I see why the OP went to insurance, but could this be a panic mistake rather than cold villainy? And isn't there room for a little empathy before grabbing the pitchfork?
The OP deserves a standing ovation for not letting that red light runner guilt trip them into a DIY fix, because who just flees the scene and expects zero consequences?
The OP made the only sensible choice by refusing to hide the claim, because anyone who runs and hides doesn't deserve a friendly break.
Can't park in front of your house? She lost her Airbnb income. I moved to Willow Creek, a tight-knit street of 20 homes with 50 feet of road frontage each, 3-car garages, and big driveways on both sides, allowing plenty of parking. Everything was peaceful until Laura, a neighbor at the far end, started leaving her blue hatchback parked smack in front of my driveway every night. At first I figured she was getting work done on her own drive, or dodging fumes, so I let it slide. But after 5 nights, my lawn crew could not mow the grass by her car, and a delivery truck had to postpone a bulky cabinet drop because there was no turning radius. I slipped a polite note under Laura's windshield, asking if she could park back home for a few days so we could mow and take deliveries. Next morning, the note was gone. Her car stayed put. And Jake, a neighbor 2 doors down, texted that Laura had cursed him out when he asked her to move, insisting it was public street. I did not want drama, so I simply parked in front of my own garage. In retaliation, Laura spent the next few days flipping me off on my Ring camera and sticking notes on my car reading, "Screw you," and "Liberal jerk." That's when I got curious. I noticed unfamiliar out-of-state cars arriving at Laura's address almost daily. A quick lookup revealed her home on Airbnb priced higher than her mortgage. I rang the county and discovered short-term rentals were banned here. The county zoning commissioner found she had been renting for nearly 5 years and levied hefty fines that landed her in court. I never saw the verdict, but after that, Laura stopped parking in front of my place. Maybe she lost her side hustle flipping off people. A story from Azzhole.
I remember when I had a neighbor hogging my curb every weekend on Elm Street, so I know exactly how empowering it is that the OP quietly stood up for herself and set healthy boundaries.
Honestly, I think the OP could have just towed Laura's car down the street for a real power move. Just imagine her face when the tow sign went up.
Girl, when I heard Laura was flipping off a Ring camera like it owed her money, I nearly spilt my coffee. That woman's parking revenge is straight out of a reality show.
The OP wasted time on polite notes instead of contacting the county first. Harsh truth is she should have cut to the chase and shined a spotlight on that illegal rental from day one.
My husband cheated and asked to try polyamory? I'm Cassie, 33, and married to Mark, 34. After 12 years together and 4 years of marriage, we finally bought our dream house last spring, with plans for kids, when Mark fell ill and started an online game to pass the time. He met Lily, about 30, and their casual gaming sessions became daily private chats, flirty texts, video calls, and eventually intimate messages. One night, Mark broke down and confessed his feelings, sobbing that he loved Lily and felt guilty but also loved me. He showed me the affectionate texts and admitted to sexting. I was shattered and spent that painful night at my friend Dana's. Despite the betrayal, I forgave him when he truly seemed remorseful and cut off contact with Lily after she discovered he was married. He gave me full access to his phone, agreed to attend marriage counseling 2 months away, and showered me with apologies and attention mixed with guilt. Then, he surprised me by asking if I'd consider opening our marriage to polyamory so he could love both of us. I felt overwhelmed, torn between our deep history and the horror of his affair. Over the next weeks, we oscillated between screaming fights, tearful makeups, and my confusion about our future. Mark admitted the open marriage idea was selfish, but insisted it was his way to reconcile his feelings. I found myself sleeping poorly, losing appetite, and questioning everything. After reading about psychological abuse, I recognized his pattern: manipulation, gaslighting, guilt trips, emotional blackmail, and even threats of self-harm when I pushed back. Therapy became essential. I booked a psychologist appointment for myself, and with Dana's encouragement, I finally decided to stop the cycle. I moved into a small apartment, still paying half our mortgage until the house sold, and tried no contact. But Mark kept showing up, calling emergency services claiming I was unwell, contacting our friends, and emotionally manipulating everyone. I filed a restraining order twice. The second was granted, and our divorce was finalized months later. The house sold, and I slept deeply for the first time in ages. During the darkest nights, I relied on prescribed sedatives to calm my shaking mind, and therapy sessions gave me grounding exercises when flashbacks hit. At 34, I celebrated my birthday in a sunlit space I now call mine. I painted the walls, added a potted plant, and enrolled in evening art classes. I reconnected with old friends, and therapy helped me navigate panic attacks, nightmares, and lingering trust issues. Healing has been messy and non-linear, but I've learned my voice and boundaries matter. I still carry scars, but I no longer carry Mark's pain. I'm embracing a future focused on self-respect, joy, and possibilities, finally free to build a life that truly belongs to me. A story from Choice_Evidence1983.
I'm so sorry the OP endured that betrayal from Mark. No one should experience that pain, and I'm proud she summoned the strength to set boundaries, seek therapy, and find her own path to healing and joy.
Maybe the OP's loyalty blinded her to Mark's toxic manipulation, and sometimes cutting ties fast is the only way to break free from that cycle.
The OP dealt with Mark's emotional roller coaster from cheating to crying wolf, honey, and I'm laughing imagining her finally dropping that breakup mic and living her best life.
The OP needed a reality check, not more tears. No more excuses for Mark's abuse. It's time she prioritized her own safety and moved on for good.
Neighbor wars, herbicide attack, and dandelion revenge. My wife and I have lived 30 years in our house, next to Linda, a neighbor whose yard is no better than mine, yet she despises us because our fallen leaves drift into her space. 20 years ago, I came home after a swing shift and smelled a toxic chemical haze. Shining my flashlight, I found white granules crunching under my boots, and my heart sank imagining bees dying and my bearded dragons falling sick. We share a 6-foot strip of land between our driveways, and I let dandelions flourish so my dragons could munch flowers and bees could pollinate my garden. Turns out, Linda had sprayed herbicide on both our lawns as revenge. When I confronted her, she whined about drifting dandelion seeds, and I pointed out every neighbor had weeds, so she might as well target the whole street. Over the years, her passive aggression mutated into petty complaints, until one night I bought massive packs of dandelion seeds, waited for darkness, and scattered them across her front and backyards. I laughed imagining her fury as her perfect green carpet turned gold, and I even caught neighbors whispering about Linda's meltdown and my clever retaliation. Now my side stays blissfully weed-free, while hers looks like a yellow infestation zone.
A story for Buffman.
I'm so sorry the OP's neighbor Linda crossed the line with herbicide, and I remember facing a similar feud. I believe the OP can set clear boundaries and document each incident to guide a peaceful outcome.
I'm thinking the OP got outwitted by Linda's herbicide plot and totally earned a full dandelion flower bomb at dawn for maximum poetic justice.
I just can't stop laughing at the OP's midnight dandelion raids on Linda's yard because it feels like a backyard version of comedy gold that deserves its own late-night skit.
I hate to say it, but the OP's seed strikes were childish, and he needs to confront Linda directly, set firm boundaries, and let the homeowners association or small claims court handle the real property mess.
My boyfriend hit me for the first time. Now what? I have been with my partner Mark for 2 years, and we share a 1-year-old son named Alex. Earlier we quarreled about moving our baby into a crib on the far side of the room, and I was exhausted after nights of restlessness. I tried to plead my case peacefully, but Mark snapped, and the argument spiraled out of control. Last night, tensions boiled over after we argued about where Alex should sleep, and the air in our apartment felt suffocating. Later, I tripped while carrying a massage gun and accidentally dropped it on Mark while he was half asleep. He jumped up, accusing me of throwing it on purpose. Out of frustration, I snapped twice. I wish I really had thrown it at you. He asked me to repeat it, and when I stayed silent, he suddenly stood and struck my arm with an open fist. I stared at the red mark blooming on my skin as shock coursed through me. Mark crumpled back onto the bed, insisting he thought I said I wanted him dead, which I never did say. He sobbed apologies, shame flooding his face. We talked for hours and agreed to give each other space. He vowed to get help and promised he was remorseful, but I know what he did was wrong and crossed a line. I replay every moment, torn between the father of my child and the man who raised his hand. Part of me wonders if I should stay for our son, but deep down, I know I deserve safety. So I packed a bag, held Alex close, and left him trusting that better days are ahead. A story from Critical Sky 8742.
I feel you, OP. You endured a terrifying betrayal yet stood up for yourself and your child, and your courage in choosing safety over fear inspires hope for peace and a brighter tomorrow.
I gotta wonder, OP, could this violent outburst have been simmering under the surface all along? And is this tearful apology just a clever disguise for deeper anger?
I'm sorry, OP, but a single hit followed by tears doesn't win an action movie award, so don't buy his sorry act. Be your own hero and walk away.
Look, OP, love doesn't excuse violence. He hit you, plain and simple. And if you let that slide for your son now, you'll teach him that abuse is acceptable.
My therapist told me to break up with my girlfriend. I am Maya, and Zoe is my girlfriend. So we started couples therapy with Dr. Kim to address our lifestyle clashes. I am restless, love travel and new experiences, while Zoe prefers cozy nights at home. From the start, our temperaments clashed. I might book a weekend trip on a whim, while Zoe needs weeks to plan a movie night. We argued before therapy when I teased she was a homebody queen, and she laughed that I was a wanderer without roots. Our first joint session felt promising, but in private meetings the tone turned icy. In my one-on-one, Dr. Kim told me Zoe said I never prioritized her and always take her for granted. I poured out that I visit her family, plan thoughtful surprises, leave little love notes, and sometimes worry nothing feels enough. She barely reacted and instead accused me of dominating everything from outings to friends, of refusing to sacrifice, ignoring any effort Zoe made, and insisting on my way or the highway. What felt like meaningful gestures to me was dismissed as meaningless tokens. I left in tears, stunned that none of my side was validated. Word then spread from when Zoe had a solo session that Dr. Kim asked Joey repeatedly if she was sure she did not want to break up with me. She branded me manipulative and selfish, and even claimed a gentle hand on her thigh was meant to silence her instead of comfort her. Zoe said she felt blindsided and hurt by how intense and biased Dr. Kim was, furious that her words about prioritization were twisted. It was not about siding with Zoe. It was about painting me as the villain without nuance or genuine curiosity. I am the first to admit I can be stubborn and want to grow, yet the approach of Dr. Kim felt shaming and harsh, reopening old wounds and leaving me feeling small and unworthy. Now I am stuck, because I cannot find another couples therapist nearby, and I do not know if I should try one more session or walk away from therapy altogether. I replay the cold gaze of Dr. Kim and Zoe sending apologetic texts, and I lie awake wondering if therapy is safe or if I should go it alone. A story from savings_split_387.
I feel your vulnerability, the OP, and I know how it hurts when someone you trust dismisses your care. Yet you also deserve a therapist who sees your heart, validates your efforts, and offers gentle guidance.
I cannot help but suspect the therapist is feeding on drama. But could the OP having a spontaneous style actually feel unpredictable to Zoe and be misread as lack of care or control?
If Dr. Kim was a sitcom character, she would be the overcaffeinated coach who only sees team failures and twists every pep talk into a horror scene, while the OP and Zoe are left auditioning for a breakup drama instead of healing.
It is time to stop tiptoeing around and admit that if Dr. Kim is out of line, the OP needs to find a therapist who respects her or sets stronger boundaries now before she wastes more time and tears.